wasn't the as the final uh, impression that one had. What came to make me feel exhilarated was the experience of the incredible magnanimity of people that people who should by right have been consumed by bitterness and anger and a lust for revenge. And it was people of all races who were able to do this, that they could want to embrace um, the perpetrators, people who had done awful things to them or to their children, mostly. Not everybody, obviously, which showed that, I mean, that this wasn't a thing that we ought to take for granted, that it was still a very surprising development. And that was what I carried away, and said, yeah, I mean, the picture is a very gloomy picture of um, our capacity to commit evil. And that is one of the things that you and I and everybody have to keep remembering, that each one of us has the capacity to be evil. And that the people who committed atrocities didn't have tails, didn't have horns. They were ordinary human beings like you and me. And so you wanted to say, there, but for the grace of God, go I. I too could, if I was exposed to the circumstances that and the pressures that this guy had, I could quite easily have succumbed and turned out as they did. It's the same. I mean, when you look at the people who committed the Holocaust, many of them call themselves Christians. Uh, and so one said, yeah, we could so easily have been overwhelmed by this bloodbath, and, and we haven't been, because there are these extraordinary human beings who have this incredible generosity of spirit. And so I went away from the TRC um, really uplifted, exhilarated.
And also the positive outlook you're talking about is not something is, is not something that you carry on all the time. I mean, there are days and there are times where you really feel very awful, where you feel I really could murder if I had the chance. Just for an example, on one occasion when they were police, of the old regime were arresting school children, and they put them all together in one hall, one school hall, and their names were being called out, and a little boy who looked not much older than 9 came up, and these were from the police cells, and all of us who were there watching sort of shouted in sort of disgust that how could, that sort of age, that sort of child be a danger to the government. And my son, who was older man at that time and working, sort of shouted the loudest, and the police took exception to this, and they grabbed him and they marched him to, they pushed him into a police van, and I ran after the van, thinking I'll catch up with them. Obviously, I didn't, but I did catch up with them at the police station because I got a lift from somebody. And at that moment, I was ready. I mean, I was ready to murder if I had a chance. But obviously,
No, kill, not murder, kill.
yes, I was ready to kill. So it wasn't as if, we were sort of always saying, no, it's all right, it's going to be all right. I mean, there were times of real anger and real hatred. I mean, you felt the hatred in you.
But I wanted on to go on to say that it is an interesting thing that human beings admire not the macho, not the powerful, not the successful even. I mean, the people we most admire, the people we in fact revere, are people like Mother Teresa. Now, you could say many things about Mother Teresa, but macho would not be one of them. Mahatma Gandhi, the Dalai Lama, Nelson Mandela, hardly successful, not powerful, but good. And we have internal antennae that home in on goodness. Because ultimately, you see, you and I are created for goodness. And when we see goodness, our hearts just almost explode in that recognition. Yep. Adam.
Yes. Oh,
Adam,
all
yes,
right.
Adam.
Good with names. Archbishop Tutu, I wanted to ask, at the 2001 Durban Conference on Racism, one of the two main resolutions on the floor, which to the best of my knowledge you supported, set out to define that Zionism as the belief in and a need of the existence of the Jewish state of Israel is inherently racist. Following the summer's evacuation of the Gaza Strip by the Israeli government, and the new potential for Mahmoud Abbas and the Palestinian Authority to lead their people to the creation of a state in this territory, do you still feel that Israel is a racist nation? And if so, can anything be done by Israel that would change the definitions of Zionism put forth in the Durban Conference?
Number one, totally untrue. I have never said Israel is a racist state. I haven't. Two, what I have certainly said, and I said it in Israel, is that for a black South African, the things that I was seeing happening there reminded me so much of what used to happen to us. I mean, the roadblocks. And I asked, how could people who themselves had suffered in the kind of way that the Jews have suffered treat other people in this fashion? And it's not just people like me who are crazies. There are Jews who say that this is a betrayal of who Jews are as a nation. I am a member of the board of the Shimon Peres Peace Center. One of the troubles, is that when you criticize Israel, not Jews, criticize Israel for behaving in a way that is unacceptable, on the basis, for me, on the basis of what Amos, Elijah, Isaiah, Jeremiah, Jewish prophets say. When you say this is unjust, people don't seem, there are those Jews, not all Jews, there are those Jews who then say, you are being anti-Semitic. They don't say, is it true or is it not true? They know that they can scare a lot of people off by saying you are being anti-Semitic. And I have to say, for me, if I see an instance of injustice, I'm afraid I can't keep quiet. this is me, and people have, I can't live with myself, and so I say what I do believe. I try to say it gently, in the hope that people can begin to want to change. Yes, I mean, I should say the evacuation of the Gaza Strip, part of it, is a good beginning, and many of us would commend your Prime Minister Sharon. But do remember, that the creation of Israel did turn many people into refugees. You turfed out quite a lot of people. Now, for me, as a South African, I walk around, say, in Jerusalem, and the Palestinian says to me, "Do you see that house, which is now occupied by a Jewish family? That used to be my home." Now, for me, it's exactly the same kind of thing that you have at home, where people would say, "Do you see that house? It used to be my home. And it's now been confiscated and taken over by whites." I hope, I still hope very much that the so-called two-state solution of a viable Palestinian state, that can still be regarded as the way forward. Because, the most wonderful solution would have been if these two Semitic peoples who are so close to each other, you say shalom, they say salam, you are so close that one wishes so much that you would be able to live together, so that the most wonderful solution would have been one state where all your citizens enjoyed democratic rights. But that is perhaps being too utopian, and so most of the world speaks about the possibilities of the two-state solution, where a Palestinian sovereign state would exist side by side with a sovereign independent Israel. And I've been amongst those who have said we want to help that happen. And as I say, being a member of the Shimon Peres Peace Center in Tel Aviv, I've been there, and they've asked us to speak about our experience in South Africa of the Truth and Reconciliation Commission process, and there have been people who have thought there were possibilities. Who is the wonderful chair of this? All right. Thank you very much. Because I'm not going to.
Hello.
Yes.
Archbishop Tutu, over 50 years after the end of formal segregation in the United States, our court systems still unequally prosecute blacks and incarcerate blacks in our country. I was wondering what kind of successes and or failures has the system in South Africa had, slightly over a decade over the end of apartheid?
Well, as you say, 50 years after your the end of segregation, you still have very many notorious instances, and we it's just 10 years, or to be exact, 11 years. and to try and um, redress. Human beings are strange creatures, you know, as you might admit, uh, that to make South Africa what we hope it is going to become. If anyone imagined that we were going to have to be able to accomplish that overnight, they would be crazy. But you know, I mean, we have tried to learn from positive and negative lessons around the world. For instance, I mean, the Truth and Reconciliation Commission thing, it wasn't a South African invention. I mean, we learned of what had already happened in Chile, in Argentina, and in other places. So we have learned and have instruments such as our Constitution. I mean, virtually everybody who studies constitutions would say that our Constitution is one of the most advanced. But of course, it is just a constitution, and it could very well not be worth the paper on which it is written. But it is there as an instrument which says these are the ideals which we want to strive after. We want to have a society that is, and our Constitution says so. It's got to be non-racial. It's got to be non-sexist. It's got to be democratic. It's got to be free. And most of the freedoms that are enshrined in the Declaration of Human Rights have been incorporated into our Constitution. That is the one thing that we're saying. We know our country is still, I mean, fragmented in a horrendous kind of way, in many ways, by all kinds of divisions. I mean, the rich-poor divide. Whilst there are some blacks who have moved up, they are still a very, very small, very minute part of that. Most of the wealth is still in white hands, and redressing that imbalance is going to be something that takes time. The fact that, I mean, for a very, very long time it was by law decreed that only 13% of the land would be occupied by blacks, who were the majority in the country. To try to redress that, land reforms, I mean, your lecturer this morning was talking about that particularly. We've got the Constitution. We've got, as our highest court, the Constitutional Court, which has, for instance, declared things like the death penalty unconstitutional. And even when the government has proposed legislation, and they have an overwhelming majority in Parliament, if the Constitutional Court says, sorry, your draft legislation is contrary to our Constitution, they have to jettison it. And we have a Human Rights Commission. We have a Gender Commission as well. We have a Youth Commission. And then we have a Public Protector, where any and everybody can go and complain if they believe that they have been hard done by authority. And then we do have a lively civil society, people who in the anti-apartheid struggle were involved in fighting for freedom. They are not likely to sort of sit back and say the government can do whatever they like. But yeah, we are moving. You know, as a former school teacher, I would say this pupil is doing well, but there is room for improvement.
Archbishop Tutu. My name's Aaron Lipkin. I'm from Minnesota. Thank you very much for being here, and Mrs. Tutu as well. This question is to both of you. I'm wondering if there's any particular experience in either of your lives that you could say either started or solidified your faith in Christianity or Jesus Christ.
You want to have a go?
After you. For me, actually, I would say the very fact of being where I am today is something that has solidified my belief in my faith in Jesus Christ. We used to campaign for freedom, for human rights at home during the apartheid years, but very often it was like just whistling in the dark. Everything seemed overwhelmingly against us, that there was never going to be a possibility of us having a simple thing like a vote in our own country. The odds were so stacked against us that very often my Christianity was put to a test. I used to say, very often I used to wonder if there is a God at all, or if really, if he had any power. But I mean, as things have turned out in South Africa, for me, I just say it's by the grace of God that things did turn out the way they did. So that for me has solidified my belief in my faith.
During the struggle, in many ways it was actually quite exhilarating to be a Christian. First of all, it was the fact that we were being sustained by the love and the prayers of so many people around the world. I was telling the group yesterday of how I met up with a nun in New York, and I asked her to tell me a little bit about her life. And she said at the time, I am a solitary, sort of a hermit or anchoress. And I live in the woods in California, and my day starts at 2 in the morning, and I pray for you. And I used to say, gee, here I am being prayed for at 2 in the morning in the woods in California. What chance does the apartheid government stand? And clearly they stood no chance. And then also, out of the blue, I was then General Secretary of the South African Council of Churches. Out of the blue, I got a letter from Alaska. Now, of course, I mean, there are no God-forsaken places anywhere in the world, but I mean, when you're in Johannesburg, Alaska, wow. And this was a letter from a Lutheran pastor in some town in Alaska, writing to me and saying, Bishop Tutu, we in our parish, thank you, we in our parish are praying for you. And he included the parish bulletin, and there were the names of all of us in the South African Council of Churches. Our staff, all of us, our names were down there, and here we were being prayed for in Alaska, prayed for by name. The South African government often thinking to pressurize me and really get me feeling awful, would sometimes withdraw my passport. And I used to go to a church in New York, St. James in Madison Avenue. And when they took away my passport, the Sunday school children sent me what they drew things, and they drew things, and then they said, passports of love. So we were so aware of being sustained by this incredible volume of prayer that we knew we belonged in something that ultimately was invincible. And you know, I mean, I used to think of there's a lovely image by the prophet Zechariah. He is describing the renewed Jerusalem, and God is saying, I am going to rebuild Jerusalem, but it is going to be so populous that it won't have conventional walls. And God says to his people through the prophet, I will be as a wall of fire around Jerusalem. And I used to say, yeah, we have experienced a light wall of fire. We are surrounded by the incredible loving and caring of so many people around the world. And that sustained me. That sustained me.
Bishop Tutu. Hi, my name is Daniel. I actually had a question for both you and Mrs. Tutu, but of a lighter note. How long ago did you guys